Concerned about effective services to deal with their mental health, some high school students have objected to the idea of confiding in guidance counselors, as they say that confidentiality is not maintained. And so to dive deeper into this concern, we have with us this morning Ms. Angelica Dalrymple, the National President of the Jamaica Association of Guidance Counselors in Education. Morning, great to meet you in person.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be here.
So I was discussing this with a guidance counselor. And one of the things they said to me was, it depends on the nature of what is discussed. Because if the issue raised is something that requires the attention of a parent or requires the attention of another teacher or administration, they have to share it. That's a thin line for me. So explain to me, what are the guidelines for guidance counselors as far as confidentiality is concerned?
As far as confidentiality is concerned, guidance counselors are professionals who have been trained, and their training incorporates how they actually carry out their roles. Primarily, we are working in a framework of legal and ethical aspects. Now, the legal aspect has to do with reporting, and reporting has to do with the agencies of the land and any other persons who will be prescribed to aid the situation.
Okay.
As it relates to ethical, we know that beneficence, non-maleficence, requires us not to do any harm. So we prevent harm and we do not impose any kind of harm. When it comes to confidentiality, as we know, there are individuals who will have to be carrying out this role, even though we are all trained. But as an association, and we know what we do, we ensure that the students would have shared with us and teachers and anyone else, and we know it becomes a part of us. So it's not something that we have to try to do. It's a part of us. Now, perhaps what happens sometimes is that the students themselves, they really do not want to have their situations or their cases be even referred. And we have to refer. They run from that from time to time, even if it's the only thing to help them. They don't want it. And most times they would say that I don't want my parents to hear. What we have found out is that parents themselves, they have a taboo on mental health. I think it is something in our society that we need to subdue. And that is what is happening, because our children and our parents, because many times we do referrals, and doing the referrals, many parents do not take their children for the help. And sometimes, and most times, these children are in need of help.
I'm going to interrupt before Janella comes in, Ms. Dar. So I'm listening now as a student, and I have an issue. I know my parent. I can't tell my parent. If I tell you, you're going to tell my parent. Where does that leave me? Because I've also had instances where students have said to me, Miss, by the time me tell the guidance counselor, when me I walk past the staff room, all of the teachers them know my business. And I said, maybe she shared it with one teacher and then but then that teacher is not tied by the legal and ethical frameworks that you are. So how do we find a midpoint for the student?
But before you answer that, I just want to add to what you're saying.
Sure.
How do you get a student to trust you in the first place?
The point here is we have many counselors who will tell you categorically that their students have trusted them. For me, I have never had a student who would have come to me and didn't get help. And I've called many parents. I've worked with many parents, serious cases, whatever you would call not serious cases. The point here is we have to help the student to understand our role. And that is where many students are lacking, because they listen to other people, they listen to things. Another thing is, you spoke about the teachers. Teachers have problem with us telling them. They will say that we don't talk to them, we don't tell them what's, for example, they would have referred a child, and they want to know what's happening to this child, and counselors are not telling them. and it becomes a problem too. So the point here is the students, they perhaps like the secrecy with their teachers, because the teachers, although they are prescribed persons, many of them are not reporting. And as such, because they will keep the secrecy, and secrecy is different from confidentiality. We have to report because it's our role to report in order to help the student. So they do not see us helping them, and I'm just speaking for some because we have many who have been helped. They do not see the help in terms of coming and the reports go. And we know that the mental health here today, the behaviors here today, there are many agencies that we have to pull in to help our students. I must tell you that many of the referrals that are done, many parents have not taken it. So it's not just a student thing. It's from parents too, the society on a whole. We just need to subdue mental health taboo. And when we do that and people start understanding the importance of mental health and that it's not a shame for somebody to do you something wrong and we are now intervening and reporting it. It's about helping you and even helping our society, moving you away from the risks that are likely to come. And
so what I'm hearing from you, Ms. Dalrymple, is it's also getting the students to see it from a different perspective.
That's correct.
So for them to see that when you share the information, it is not about betraying them, it is about trying to help them.
That's correct, but we need to understand that guidance counselors do not share information with teachers, not that I know of, and that's not what we do. Yes, we share information with the principals, but the kind of information that we share with the principals are matters relating to the school. If there's a risk factor in the school, for example, we know that this child might be hurting other children and so forth, or the school is going to have an uproar or something like that. There are matters that are shared with the principal in the interest of protecting the children at school. However, when there are personal matters non-relating to school, and I must tell you that many of the matters are non-relating to school. They come in one morning and having situations. I know of schools, in addition to the school that I serve, who have had very good system in terms of helping their children. Also, I believe that there is a conflict of roles between teachers, HFLE teachers, and guidance counselors. As a result, many of these persons, they do not do the internal referral as they should, because we have an internal referral system where the teachers and HFLE teachers, whoever they are, should be using that referral system to send to us. But what we find most is happening is that these persons, these professionals, my colleagues, they would have listened to the children's story. They maybe sometimes don't refer it at that time, and when it gets really, really bad, when they can't really do anything about it, but they have not reported it, they're not doing anything about it, they're just keeping the secret.
Do they know the protocol?
For many schools, they do, and I say that because it is the role of the guidance counselors to ensure that the school is oriented with the role of the counselor.
If I feel that my confidentiality has been breached, what is the recourse for me as a student or as a parent? Who do I report the guidance counselor to if I feel like the guidance counselor has breached confidentiality?
I like what you say, feel like.
Right.
Feel like. Because the point is, guidance counselors know that it's a breach to do so. Remember, we operate...
Ms. Angelica, people know, say, if your teeth, you go...
But they have to...
them teeth anyway.
They'll have to provide evidence. And that evidence, because what I find... Let me tell you a little scenario here. What I find is that the children, first of all, they tell their friends.
Okay.
And when they tell their friends, they may end up with the teacher. I mean, I'm talking about schools where the children don't come directly.
Right.
But there are some schools, they don't bother with that, they come directly. And there are teachers who refer them, and we have that system. But in a system where the they tell their friends. When they tell their friends, things are okay, friends keep the secret. They keep the secret for a little while. And then afterward, when anything happens, then it starts going out. Sometimes, too, a friend may tell a teacher, depending on the story.
Okay.
And out of that, teachers will hear. Because the teacher is with the students more than ever, and they will always hear the story. But the point here is when they hear the story, they need to refer instead of sharing the story.
We have to go because we don't have time, but I still wanted to answer from a question.
Which
do
one?
I go to the principal? Where do I go?
Well, there is a law.
There's a law.
Yes,
Right.
there is a law if we breach.
All right, we have to go. But thank you so much. Very enlightening. And thanks to the Guidance Council for all that they do.
This needed a longer discussion.
It
but
did.
Yeah.
It did.
Thank you so very much for having me.
National President of the Jamaica Association of Guidance Counselors in Education, Angelica Dalrymple.
Now, coming up, Health Goes Digital. We talk about the new electronic health record system, and we'll have more after this break.